we're going to go over the patch notes that have changed recently in the update to patch 1.30, which will be going to the live servers at some point in the near future. Don't know exactly when, but it will obviously be coming because it's on the PTR right now, and they've made some interesting changes. A few bug fixes, known issues, but we're going to go over the changes very quickly and briefly as best as possible. The hero balance changes, this is where it gets more interesting. The Mountain King, nerf to the Stormbolt. I don't think this needed to happen. It's a little bit less damage, nothing too significant. It's a very minor nerf, but I don't feel like it needed another nerf on top of the previous nerf. The damage is high, but at the same time it's 75 mana and it's not exactly a super spammable ability, and the stun is more important than the damage itself, so I suppose it's not too much of a nerf, just a little bit more of a dig towards humans. Speaking of which, Thunderclap, the one thing that humans had going for them recently in the patch, was nerfed. But the change isn't too bad. I think it was needed. This one definitely needed, because I have to admit that when I was fighting versus orcs with the Thunderclap, Mountain King, if you were lucky enough or went out of your way to make yourself lucky and get yourself pendants of energy, basically more mana for your Mountain King, you could whittle down the orc army by just pressing the C button, which is Thunderclap, every time it was off cooldown, whilst your Mountain King was amongst the orc army. Now, normally, Thunderclap's not too much of an issue, because Mountain King mana pool doesn't allow for him to cast it like 6 or 7 times in a row. But if you get those items that do that, the orc cannot Spirit Link and out-heal the damage of Thunderclap, even with healing scrolls. It will eventually break them down, which was always quite hilarious. So this just makes it a little bit harder to break the orc army down, I think. 65 to 60, 125 to 115, 175 to 160. Not too much of an issue. It doesn't seem like the AoE has got nerfed, so the largeness, that's not the right term, but you know, the wide area of Thunderclap that got buffed hasn't been changed. It's just the damage. Farseer, Farsight, cooldown for all level is now 30 seconds. Level 1 radius, still awful. I hate the change that made it have a cooldown. It gave it like a 30-second cooldown. I hate that. I know it's free and doesn't cost any mana, but I mean, I just think of the Tower Islands that Preki and we don't even do anymore, but it still annoys me and triggers me that this is a thing, and it shouldn't have such a long cooldown. It's depressing. Pit Lord, base starts, increasing starting agility from 14 to 15, a little bit more tankiness. I wonder if that puts his armor up by 1. I know you get 0.3 armor per point of agility, but whether that just increases it to a next level. Cleave and attack, increased AoE for all levels from 200 to 250, and increased the splash damage 30 to 40, 55 to 65, 80 to 90%. So cleave and attack got a bit of a buff. It wasn't even a bad ability in the first place. It's just not on the right hero, or it's not so much that it's not on the right hero. It's more the case of the hero that it's currently on can't utilize it as well as a quicker, nimbler hero with a faster turn rate. However, Pit Lord, if he does continue to keep getting buffs, the cleave and attack could be a real threat. I actually think it's pretty good. It just needs a little bit more love, and the Pit Lord needs a little bit more love, and then it'll be taken more seriously like the Goblin Alchemist was recently. The Goblin Alchemist wasn't taken seriously at all in the past, but you made a few changes, made it so that his heal doesn't heal enemy units, and his acid bomb is more of a threat, and then boom, he's actually like a top tier hero now. So a few changes can make a world of difference, and Pit Lord might be making his way up those changes. Goblin Tinker continues to get buffs to cluster rockets, even though no one still uses it, but it's still strong. Remember, it was changed so it can hit mechanical, and I think it was changed so it can hit air, so you could actually hit gyrocopters. It's crazy. Like, they've made quite a lot of changes to this, and it continues to get buffs. Increase the base damage from 18.75 to 19.75, and increase the base damage from 27.5 to 30.5. Not a massive buff, but it just continues to keep getting love. So Blizz really want to see cluster rockets being used in competitive gameplay. Human balance changes. This is when it gets a lot more serious, okay? We've got a couple of changes in this list of changes that I think are really significant. The Riflemen being one. Always thought the Riflemen needed to be a little bit cheaper, really, more than anything else. I didn't think it was a bad unit. I just think it was a little bit too pricey and costly for the human to get when they're suffering so much versus air harass from orcs with wyverns, with undead, with destroyers, although destroyers did get changed. rifles struggle to get out as well as towers because of the wood cost, and then you want to tech, and then you want to get an expansion. How can you afford all of this? So the wood was really the biggest issue for me with Riflemen, but this is a huge change. 0.15 decreased attack cooldown. It doesn't sound like that much, but it is actually pretty good. It means their attack DPS is going to be a lot more threatening. So when they're sitting in the back line firing away, they're going to be doing a significant more portion of DPS. So that's a pretty big deal. I think that's quite an underrated change. Some people might not realise that that's going to have more of an impact than we realise. Although human in general did get quite a lot of nerfs, so it might not feel that much of an issue when the patch comes out because human got quite a lot of nerfs. This will help them, but if they had more buffs, this would be like overkill. So I guess it's okay. Cannon Tower. Fragmentation Shard applies. It's a necessary change. It makes sense. I agree with it. But Cannon Tower is still never going to get to see play until it gets significant love. I think it costs like 200 gold and 100 wood or something along those lines to upgrade to a Cannon Tower on top of the Ivory Tower cost, which is quite crazy. And it takes an eternity, and it requires workshop. Upgrades. Defend. Damage reduction from 40% to 50%. Reflection damage increase from 90% to 100%. So I think this has been more or less changed back to how it was, but I'm still not entirely sure because it was always the most confusing change that they made because it turned out it was really bugged in the past and it wasn't working how it's supposed to be working. In fact, it was working too well. But the irony is it was actually pretty well balanced because human would still lose a lot of the time versus range units. I've always said that Undead Fiends still beat Footmen with Defend on and in the more overpowered previous patch. Now, I think it's a bit tougher for Footmen, but this might make it so it's more even. So I'm not entirely sure what to make of that, whether it's been changed back to how it was. Footmen need that Defend. They're pretty easy to pick off, even with Defend on. So I don't know what just happened to the chat there. It disappeared. Alright. Now we're moving on to... yeah, this said Fragmentation Shards now applies to the Cannon Tower. We knew that one. This is a change that baffles me. Barrage is the steam engine. That's the tank. Its ability to attack air units. They increased its base damage to 12 to 14. 13 to 14 damage to 15 to 16. I don't know why that got buffed. As Death Knight said to me the other day, it's more of a case of it means hippogriffs, gargoyles, more vulnerable air units will be absolutely obliterated even faster by this. So I can't understand why tanks got buffed in this manner. Perhaps it's purely on the 1 versus 1 scale that they wanted to make tanks more accessible versus lighter air masses, but totally unnecessary. Orc balance changes. This makes me even more excited to play Orc because I've already been practicing a bit more with Orc and I really enjoy playing TC and Headhunters because Tauren Chieftain is my favourite hero and Headhunters always go, wah, what you wah, wah. And I love their voices, so I get to listen to that more. Increase the gold cost by 5, but they increase the range by 100, which means that it will be a lot more easy to exploit creeps and potentially other players with hit and run attacks. An extra 100 range means that they can attack from further distance, obviously, but it also has a large impact on how you interact with the environment and sort of like the corridors that Warcraft 3 lead up to. So you've got more range to attack from a distance and keep yourself behind tree lines and all that kind of stuff, as well as pulling creeps further back or getting an extra dig on them to keep them coming back towards you. That's a most welcome change. Headhunters are still quite bad, but with the changes that are going to include more health, more regeneration, and now more range, they're going to be a lot better. I hope anyway. Shaman, or Shaman. Bloodlust has been reduced to 35 mana, down from 40. I always used to think it was 50 anyway, so I guess this is fine. And they got increased mana regeneration, just a little bit more love. Witch Doctors, the base stats, increase mana regeneration just a tiny bit, that's fine. I love the Witch Doctors. Spirit Lodge, reduce the cost from 150 to 135. I think this is a good change. So it makes it more that orcs aren't going to completely forget about the Spirit Lodge and just build the Tauren Totem for their Spirit Walker, which is basically the cow caster. Because obviously orcs love Spirit Link more than any of the other casters. They only get Witch Doctors because it's in the same lodge, basically, and they can put a sentry ward down, and they almost never get Shaman. Now, you'd have to actively build a separate Spirit Lodge if you wanted that Shaman or Witch Doctor gameplay. So 135 lumber instead of 150 is still, you know, a little bit less than you would have to pay otherwise for that extra bonus. Orb of Lightning, decrease the chance to purge from 35 to 30. That is a necessary change, I think. It makes sense. It's still RNG based, and the Blade Master still attacks incredibly quickly, but the Blade Master has -2 agility now, and obviously slightly less chance, so his attacks will be slightly slower as well. So it will be less likely that he'll be able to get those purge, but it's still RNG based more than anything else, which perhaps the purge effect itself is what needs to be changed, not the percentage. If you wanted to make it more fair, the purge, in my opinion, and I don't necessarily want this because I enjoy playing Orc at the moment, but if I want to be in the interest of fairness, I think that the purge effect from the Blade Master shouldn't stop the unit. It should reduce its movement speed by, say, 75%, which decays very quickly over 3 seconds to 0%. So it slows it down, but it doesn't stop it in its track like it currently does. Because when it does that, you've pretty much got a guaranteed kill. They'll try to move it, but it will just proc again and again and again, because the Blade Master can attack so quickly. So I think that's a good change, but I don't think it really addresses the issue that comes from the Orb of Lightning, which is essentially a free kill if it procs. Okay, so Raiders actually got an interesting buff here. At first, on glance, you think this is a nerf. Reduce the duration for units from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. But lasting for 10 seconds is an incredibly long time anyway. I can't believe it was 12 seconds. 12 seconds, a unit can't move. And it can't be dispelled or anything, or interacted in that way, because it's a physical effect. And they reduced the cooldown from 16 to 15 seconds. So they basically reduced the duration by 2 seconds, but also reduced the cooldown by 1 second. So technically it's kind of a nerf, but not really, because those units are trapped for a long time regardless, and the effect on heroes is going to be stronger. So if your raiders are chasing stuff down, it will take less time for them to get that ensnare so they can, you know, focus on getting some kills, getting some damage done. So I think this is technically a buff to ensnare, which is kind of bizarre. Reinforced defenses, base stats, reduced from 200 to 175 lumber, increased the gold cost. So they basically made it a bit more pricey for gold and less on the lumber, which is basically a buff because gold is easier to attain than lumber is, at least in the early to mid game. So reinforced defenses benefit from that. Or get reinforced defenses at tier 2, remember that. So that's going to be very nice for them. I think that's kind of a good change as well for the Headhunters. I still say that the biggest change that needs to occur in the Warcraft 3 that will help balance a lot of issues for certain races, Orc in particular suffering from burrow focus, and other races suffering from tier 2 rushes with towers, is the neutral tavern not being able to instantaneously pick a hero the moment you hit a tier 2 from a tavern that's already in the middle of the map, basically at least halfway towards your opponent. It's broke. It's been broke since forever. I've said this for a long time, and no one seems to share the same sentiment, at least from my experience. No one seems to actually realize how strong that is. It is an insane power spike if someone can pick up their second hero instantaneously and come to your base within 15 seconds effectively from picking that hero up. They've now got 2 heroes where you will most likely have 1, and you might be building your second hero, but it's going to take 40 seconds before he comes out, before that second hero is already at your base attacking it. And this could be the Fire Lord with lava spawns and towers behind it. It's a huge power spike. You throw everything you have, 2 heroes, all of your units, all of your resources into towers, whilst the other player might be sort of building sensibly. And going for tier 2, they're getting their Spirit Lodge, but they've got to wait 50 more seconds for that to build. They've already put resources into it. Their bestiary. It makes no sense. Just put a 30-second delay at least on that tavern. That's always been my biggest gripe. I always thought that was so broke, and how Blizzard haven't even recognised that is shocking to me. Pulverize requires war mill. Tech tree. Okay, fair enough. I guess. I don't think people are going to build Tauren now, unless they're already winning the game. Spiked barricades cost a hell of a lot less. 175 to 100, 275 to 125 lumber. I mean, that makes them so much more accessible. It helps versus footmen attacking your burrows, but I don't think any orc's going to invest 100 lumber or 125 lumber into spiked barricades. I can't remember what the level 1 upgrade costs, but yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen still. Undead balance changes. Necromancer, increased base damage from 7 to 9. 8 to 9 damage to 10 to 11. This is nice. They keep giving Necromancers a bit of love. A little bit of extra damage. Skeletal longevity, tech tree. I mean, that's a pretty important change, actually, because it means they hold up and stand up on their own. If you get too many of them, they won't be completely useless when they can't summon skeletons. They can still hold up a little bit more on their own. They're not great, but they still hold up a little bit better. Longevity was removed and included in Skeletal Mastery. So this means that the length of your duration of your skeletons is now for free if you get Skeletal Mastery. Skeletal Mastery increased the gold cost. Went up quite a lot, actually. 125 to 200 gold. Increased lumber cost from 150 to 175. I guess you get this included, and you would typically buy that, but it's a little pricey, but okay. I would probably just increase it by 25 or 50 gold, and maybe not change the lumber cost at all. Tech tree now includes skeletal longevity. Oh yeah, that's fine. Items. Book of the Dead. Change number of skeleton warriors and archers from 4 each to 3 each. So they changed the health of the skeleton warrior and archer from 180 to 190. I think this affects the undead necromancer rod, doesn't it? Increasing the health of the skeleton warrior. It's actually technically stronger, which is already kind of crazy because the skeletal rod is actually one of the best items in the game. I think the only item better than skeletal rod is healing salve. I think healing salve is the number one broken item that you can purchase from a shop in the earliest game. Obviously, Orb of Corruption, Orb of Lightning have a bigger impact in the late game, but for the early game, the amount of value you get from healing salve is crazy. And skeletal rod. A smart undead player will try to buy skeletal rod on cooldown. Happy does that a lot. You should be trying to use as many of them as you can because they are ridiculously good. Ridiculously good. So, Book of the Dead, not quite as strong as it was because you're basically getting effectively less units, but it's still kind of hard to counter if you're not Night Elf or something like that, and someone just rushes your base with that power spike. I always thought it should have 2 charges, and each charge should give 2 skeleton archers and warriors each. So you can't... It's got like 2 charges with a 30 or 45 second cooldown, so you can't sort of spam all of them out at the same time. You can bring a few out and then wait 30 to 45 seconds and go again. Okay. Night Elf balance changes. So, I don't think that many of you probably play 2 versus 2. I don't even play that much 2 versus 2. But the real try-hard 2 versus 2 players, the top ones, will pretty much be Night Elf players and Undead, or Night Elf players and Orc. They do have different combos, but generally speaking, Night Elf is like the most played race when it comes to 2v2. And Huntress is so strong already, and it's getting so many buffs for 1 versus 1. The previous buffs that we know of, because they get Sentinel for free, and they're just better. They also get their tier 3 upgrade in tier 2 or something. I can't remember exactly how that one worked. But, yeah, they increase the base damage from Huntresses. I don't think Huntresses are bad units. They're situational units, yes. I don't think they need any more buffs. They're already pretty strong. Night Elf already have a good position when it comes to sort of mass hunts and AP pushing and rushing. So I'm not sure why Huntresses need buffs. I guess it's because they want Night Elf to stop straight taking to tier 3 and get mass talons. Or druids, maybe, but They'd have to nerf the druids and the talons to make it so that the huntress and the archer buffs were important or made sense, because otherwise they're just getting extra buffs to units that they might not even build, and if they build them, then sure, they've got more stronger units than they needed in the first place. 2v2, the Night Elf player will basically build 2 Engines of War and a Huntress Hall and do nothing but build Huntresses for the entirety of the game. The game could go on for 20 to 30 minutes and they'd still spam out Huntresses. I don't quite understand this meta, but I know it's incredibly effective. They know it better than I do, and that's genuinely what they do. The Night Elf's job is just to make Huntresses all the game long and harass non-stop, whilst the other player creeps and stuff. The tech tree, Sentinel has a 180 second duration. So it's not a charged item anymore. This is the same Sentinel from Huntress, is it not? It used to be a one-off charge. Wow. So now they can cast it every 3 minutes. You could effectively light up the entire map and have complete vision of it if you had enough Huntresses and did it well on cooldown. That's pretty ridiculous. Mountain Giant now activates a second time after 3 seconds. Cooldown increased from 15 to 16 seconds. People are saying no, witty. Duration means the owl will expire. Ah. Right. Okay. That's interesting. That's quite clever, actually. Rather than it being a permanent thing, it's a case of, I better put this in the right position. That's going to affect me for the next 3 minutes of the gameplay. Huh. Okay, that's fine. I'm agreeing with that. Now, the Mountain Giant activates a second time after 3 seconds. This one really interested me because this is like the first ability that actually looks like a Dota style ability or a World of Warcraft style ability in the Warcraft 3 engine. Now activates a second time, so you will use it, and then after 3 seconds it will automatically cast itself again, which is kind of cool. Because it just means it's more of a hassle for the enemy to keep on their target and not distracted by the Mountain Giant. The cooldown is increased by 1 second. That's fine, considering they're getting double use out of it. Neutral balance changes. In Snare, neutral hostile, just duration is lower. And they increase the cooldown. So this means that Murgle snappers, something like that. Trappers probably would be more likely. Troll trappers, they're in Snare, is going to last less time, which is pretty good because most of the time they ensnare in a very punishing way, which costs the unit its life. They ensnare on Naga. Are they making Naga the 4th race? The 5th race, sorry. Why is Naga getting changed? I don't know. Cannibalize. Creep cannibalize changed from 10 to 12. And duration reduced. Okay, that's fair enough. That more or less falls in line with the actual normal ghoul cannibalize. But creeps get that as well. There's not many creeps that have cannibalize though, apart from the Murgle flesh eaters, I think. Yeah. Boost of Speed now has a stock of 2 at the game start, which is interesting because it's actually means you can go straight to the shop, buy a Circlet of Nobility and a Boost of Speed. So there's going to be a lot more people in 4 versus 4 RT going Blade Master only, straight taking to Wyvern, and just focusing on their Blade Master. I foresee that in 4 versus 4 RT changing more than it does in 1 versus 1. But it's still going to have a big impact on 1 versus 1. Remember, there's actually a lot of pros now that don't actually spend on the Boost of Speed. I still think it's worth the 250 gold, but there's a lot of pros that are able to sort of macro intensely enough and do the math correctly that they can sense that they can't afford to spend on a certain item, because when they hit tier 2 or something, they're going to need all those resources for the tier 2 buildings in their second hero. All this kind of stuff impacts. So purchasing 250 gold right at the very start of the game, not even like when nighttime comes, it's going to hurt you because it's going to cost you a grunt or something like that. But then again, Orc do a 1 burrow tech lately, so I think this benefits Orc a lot. But it also helps human players and such. However, the human player still needs to be able to access the shop to get the boots of speed. And they're probably going to get killed or hurt whilst doing it. If they really want to get that boost of speed to avoid Blade Master. Because an Orc player, Blade Master, will basically focus the human player. Because you're effectively better spending your time with a Blade Master by denying your opponent experience than gaining it with your own Blade Master and on creeps. You're better off denying your opponent, and getting boosts of speed at the start will make that a lot easier. Map updates. Road to Stratham revised based on community comments but not yet added to the 131 poll. Me and Nick made that change. Nick will be happy. Twisted Meadows. Red Dragons replaced with Granite Golems. Granito Golems. To prevent base harass. Thanks, you Gralanian. So we know who to blame for that. Pilkas, thank you very much there for the sub. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry that we couldn't see the notification come through there because I've got the PTR patch notes in front of it. Thank you very much there, Pilkas. Yeah, you might notice that in the background there's a rock golem right here, or granite golem. That should really be a red dragon. So all of you, I like you, Gralanian. He's actually an awesome dude. However, I do not like this idea and his way to persuading the Blizz devs to change it. I know there was another Blizz dev that didn't like the red dragon and had intentions to change it quite some time ago. I think I was the only person in the universe in this day and age that actually did the red dragon trick. And even then, I wouldn't be able to pull it off half the time. Because it was incredibly difficult to do. It required a lot of effort. It required a lot of scenarios where the opponent had to be in the right place at the right time. You had to be in the right place at the right time. Not having a bad game. Having a great game so that you can tech fast enough to tier 2 without being under pressure. And in the first place, tier 1. If they just carry on creeping, they're not going to be suffering that much from it. And I've also had opponents that are so good that they actually used it to their advantage and creeped the red dragon. And got the kill, got the item, and I lost the game because I basically pulled the red dragon into their base. So it's not as OP as it seems to be. It requires a lot. Yes, Frostwolf saying it's not even possible versus the good players. That's kind of what I was hinting at. If you're a strong player, you can actually use this to your advantage. It's not necessarily giving me the advantage pulling the dragon into your base. Sometimes it gives them the advantage because it's like, oh, a level 10 creep. That's going to drop a very powerful item. Sure, I can creep that. So, Blizz, if you're listening, please change this back because I actually feel that you need more things like the red dragon in your game. It means more showboating. It means more fun demonstrations of skill, flair, and technique. It just means more entertainment for the audience. Imagine if you saw that in a pro game. People would love that. They go, oh, he's going for the red dragon trick. He's going to pull it off. Is he going to get it? He gets the red dragon down. And it's just like, it would be so awesome. I think a lot of people would enjoy stuff like that. It needs more of that, if anything, but there you go. It is what it is for now. Appendix, defend. Oh, this is the whole explanation of how defend works, and I'm still kind of confused about it. The immune field was calculated twice, 30% reflection immune damage. Oh my goodness. I still don't quite understand exactly what they made to it, but it tells you here, I guess. But 70% they take 50 damage, or 21% they used to be immune to damage, and then the other 49 they would take 50. So they had a 21% extra immunity. Now they don't. So footmen are still technically worse in 1.30. Feels bad, man. Feels human, man. Okay. Well, there you go. Those are quite a lot of significant changes. The red dragon trick, the boost of speed, mountain giants, huntresses being changed, the orb of lightning being changed slightly. Actually, no, scrap that one. That's not as significant. The Headhunters and the Riflemen are the significant changes here. Everything else, minor and in line, to the point. Thank you very much for watching. Make your own decisions as to what you think should be changed and what should be changed. What did you like? Do you think the Red Dragon should stay? We need more Red Dragons in our life. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.